All right, and then just a couple of housekeeping items. I have muted everyone upon entry just to keep background noise to a minimum. I am super happy to take questions and comments throughout. So please go to the chat icon, which is a little bubble in the tail, and then you're able to type in your question or your comment, click to everyone, and then I'll be monitoring the chat on a regular basis and responding to questions. So first off, why me? Why am I facilitating this webinar? Well, I do have a very keen interest in mental health and psychology. I studied psychology in my undergraduate and graduate degrees prior to taking veterinary medicine at the Ontario Veterinary College. I am not a licensed psychologist or counselor. And when I was in veterinary school, I recognized that as a community, veterinary professionals, RVTs, veterinarians, and staff, we have high degrees of psychological distress. And in a way, we're wounded healers. So I recognized very early on in my career that I needed to take better care of my own mental health, particularly given my family history of mental health diseases. So I started doing mindfulness-based stress reduction. I've taken the mindfulness-based self-compassion course, the stress reduction course. I practice mindfulness every day. I became a certified yoga instructor and do teach yoga and mindful breathing. I also took the mental health first aid course, so I'm a certified mental health first aider. I'm very keen on how to help people who do have suicidal thoughts stay safe. Part of that comes from my own desire within my family to keep people who have suicidal thoughts safe. So I've taken the Safe Talk, which is through the Canadian Mental Health Association Suicide Awareness course, and I am certified to teach that course. And I've taken the Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training course, which helps to provide people who do have thoughts of suicide with a plan to stay safe. I am a member of the Alberta and the Canadian Veterinary Medical Association Member Wellness Committee, and I am a practitioner of wellness in everyday life, and that word practice is so important because I'm not good at it. I practice every day with mindfulness and mindful movement, and also getting out to the barn to ride my horse Flora. Being at the barn just helps me to be more mindful of breath, mindful of what she's doing around me, because I recognize that I could get injured with her. So it really does help me stay present to the moment, which is truly what mindfulness is all about. And I'm very grateful that as a Merck Technical Services veterinarian, Merck does allocate about a certain percentage of my time as a technical services veterinarian to be able to provide wellness training to the veterinary community. And last year, I spearheaded with Merck and the Canadian Vet Medical Association the Time to Talk About Mental Health and Veterinary Medicine campaign, and that continues for the next several years, and this webinar is part of that campaign. So I thank both the CVMA and Merck for supporting me in this initiative. So the learning objectives of the webinar today are, first off, to make sure that you have access and you have knowledge of community and social resources to help yourself and your team members and just people in general stay psychologically safe in the midst of this unprecedented change and fluidity of change with COVID-19. Because I want the Time to Talk About Mental Health and Veterinary Medicine campaign to be more than just talking, I am going to take us through a mindful activity, because this sort of mindfulness activity you can do anytime. It's very agile to help keep your thoughts from racing. I will provide more tips too on how to stay psychologically safe during this COVID situation. And then the element of being together with kindness and that social connection, given that we are either physically distancing or we're self-isolating or socially isolating, is really important for our mental health. So you may, as I did, look at the participant list and think, oh, there's a person I haven't talked to in a month or a year or half a year, and reach out to them, text them, get in contact with them, because that really helps us keep very mentally healthy and resilient. So I'm just going to go back to that first point about community and social resources for psychological safety. It is normal in this unprecedented crisis to feel anxious and to feel stressed. I know that you all have very stressful jobs to begin with, and this just adds another layer of anxiety, and it's okay to feel anxious. It's a normal response. Our body is going to respond to any danger, either real or perceived, in a sympathetic overdrive. Cortisol levels go up, our heart rate, respiration goes up, and then our thoughts, our moods can get the better of us. However, psychologists also recognize that in the face of adversity, we can become resilient. And by resilient, They mean that we may learn skills that we didn't have before. We may strengthen the existing characteristics and skills that we have. We develop more self-awareness, and there's an element of growth of both personal and social development in these stressful times. So we come out the end of it stronger, so that we're surviving and not just thriving, because sometimes it feels like we're just kind of hanging on by our fingernails. So talking about mental health at the best of times can be hard, I think, particularly with our community, because we do know there's high rates of psychological distress in our community, but at the same time, there's a lot of self-stigma, right, where we don't want to let people know how we're feeling because it's a sign of weakness or vulnerability, or we think we may be judged or labeled as damaged goods. So I want to recognize that it is okay to talk about how we're feeling and our moods, and I want to make sure that you're okay. And there are a couple of things about the word okay, very important, is that it's okay to not be okay, and I mean mentally, emotionally, and it's okay to reach out and ask others for help, and that it's okay to talk about it and not just hold it within and say, I'm just going to soldier ahead, I'm going to put on my chaps, I'm going to pull up my bootstraps, and I'm just going to do it. Because if I don't soldier through, then no one else is going to help me or be able to do something for me. And a really good place to reach out to is the Provincial Veterinary Association Employee Assistance Plan Provider. And I've created a list of provincial providers, and this list is a 2-page list, is available on the CVMA website. And so, or maybe I'll just remind people as they've joined, because I see the participant list is growing so much, which is fabulous. Thank you for joining. If you joined as a call-in user, so you're only joining via audio, please mute your phone so that we can reduce background noise. And if you have joined by audio, please note that I am recording this session so that all of the visual slides and the audio will be available as a recorded presentation on the CVMA website Monday. So we're looking at the slide right now that shows the mental health resource list. And this is a 2-page list that lists every single veterinary provincial association, which does have an employee assistance plan provider. And most veterinary provincial associations do. And the beauty about having these employee assistance plan providers is they are completely confidential and anonymous. So as a member of the Provincial Veterinary Association, you do not need to ask your manager or your boss for permission to call, and nor will the Veterinary Provincial Association utilize the EAP. Your name will not be put forward. They do get usage statistics and how many people are using the employee assistance plan every month or every quarter, but it's completely anonymous and confidential. And I think many of us think that the employee assistance plan is there to provide psychological counseling, and that's for sure a big area of the EAP. However, especially in these times, the financial uncertainty, you can ask for financial advice. You can get on the phone with a financial advisor or maybe get on a webinar chat with them. There are also people who can provide help if there's any conflict working with people either in the workplace or at home, because we know our workplace and our home environments have changed, with maybe workplaces having shortage of staff right now, as well as at home. There are people at home that usually aren't at home, and how to navigate through that. And there is a lot of emphasis right now on creating wills and personal directives, especially for people who in our lives may be older than we are. So the EAP can also provide access to lawyers to be able to organize wills and personal directives. Now, in many of these cases, the employee assistance plan is free at a veterinary association, and we know some of those associations have both RVTs and veterinarians as members. And some of these providers, like Homewood Health, which is the provider here in Alberta, allow staff to join up at a nominal cost to the clinic, so that every staff member has access to the EAP. And some of the large corporate practices or large individual practices have their own employee assistance plan. So do make sure that if you're in a clinic situation, and particularly if you're the office manager or the boss or the owner of the practice, make sure everyone has access to the employee assistance plan phone numbers. These phone numbers are also, or these plans are also accessible with apps and online too. The counselors have a minimum of master's level degree certification. Many of them are trained in trauma response, So they recognize that we can be burnt out, we can be fatigued in a compassion type of way. And so you can also ask to switch counselors to get a counselor who is more trained in something that you particularly need help with. And then just going back to this slide on, well, who else can we reach out for help in these times of unprecedented crisis and change? The Canadian Crisis Line, which is 1-833-456-4566, is a Canadian-wide phone number for anyone in crisis. So it could be a staff member, a family member, a friend, yourself, a client who's in distress. It also serves as a suicide support line. People can also access that crisis line by texting 45656 and also going online to www.suicideprevention.ca for a list of all of the Canadian crisis centers and phone numbers. Now, 211 is available in every single province. So this is a phone number, put it into your cell phone or call from a landline, and it will be connected to paid people who know all of the community and social services in your local area. So on the Wednesday call, someone asked about staff being particularly concerned now about finances and will they have enough money to pay their rent or pay their manage their car loan. And so what 211 can do is when you call, they will connect you with local resources that maybe provide free money advice. So here in Calgary, there's Money Mentors. It's free. People can access them to get help on what can I do. And one of the things that Money Mentors will encourage people to do if they're worried about meeting their payments is call those providers. Call TELUS, call the utilities provider, call the car dealership if there's a payment with a car, and just ask those providers, what can you do for me? I'm worried, I'm strapped right now. And we're hearing that those providers are doing things like reducing the monthly minimum payment, or they're extending payment terms. So I do encourage 211, if you or a coworker or a friend or family member, they're struggling with a particular aspect of their life right now with respect to COVID, use 211 and get connected to a local community mental health or social support resource. And then again, about the whole thing about talking about how one's feeling and the mental health and the psychological state that we're in. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to tell people. If people are telling you, don't feel like you need to solve their problem. Just be there to listen. And then that also tells that person that you are a good person to talk to. You make it safe, you make it comfortable, and that you don't judge. So I'm going to stop there because what I found on Wednesday is that people have their own suggestions on local community resources to reach out to in these times. So I invite you to go to the chat, type in any suggestions you have for community or social supports that help you and coworkers, family members through these times of psychological uncertainty. Awesome. Yes. Thanks, Catherine. Mindfulness training. That's excellent. Do you have a particular website or even app that you're using, Catherine? Yeah, VIN. So VIN Continuing Education has a lot. I noticed they had some online sessions. So that is a great source of mindfulness training. Sip of water here. There's also some online mindfulness training. If you just type into Google online mindfulness-based stress reduction free, you'll get connected to an online course that a psychologist has set up in the United States. And we'll get the chance to do a mindfulness exercise in a couple of minutes. And thanks to for the reminder to for people to leave their phones. Shoppers Drug Mart just opened up their Silver Cloud program, CBT, to everyone with a Shoppers code. That is fantastic. Thanks, Jessica. That's Shoppers Drug Mart, their Silver Cloud program, which is a cognitive-based therapy program to everyone with a Shoppers code. So keep those suggestions coming. I'm going to move on to the next slide here. And this is my cue to take a breath and also recognize that one of the learning objectives was for us to practice, actually do something that's good for our mental health. And that's a mindfulness meditation. And what mindfulness does is staying present to the moment as the moment changes, moment to moment. And it's so easy for our minds to take over, for our thoughts to hijack the rational parts of our brain. And by doing a mindfulness activity where we pay attention to the breath, but also pay attention to sensations, where we pay attention on purpose, is a really good way to shift from our monkey mind and our racing thoughts. So I'm going to invite you to do this with me. I'll guide you through it. It's about a 3-minute exercise. You don't need to do anything different. Just sit where you are, or if you're standing like me, just stand where you are and start to pay attention to the part of your body in contact with the air. Maybe it's the small of your back. Maybe it's the back of your thighs on the chair. Feel how your feet, if your feet are pressing on the ground, how do the soles of your feet feel on the ground? And feel the ground supporting your feet. You may close your eyes or keep them open. And start to bring attention to the breath. And there's nothing you need to do special with the breath. Just notice the breath moving through your body, that your body is breathing. Now bringing your attention to any sounds around you. Perhaps it's the sound of my voice, maybe the sound of your body, maybe it's your computer or your device whirring. There's no need to look for a sound, just become attentive to the sounds. And now bringing your attention to your body. Maybe it's feeling some tingling in your fingertips. Maybe it's the feeling of your feet in your socks, or your socks in your shoes or slippers. Maybe it's you do a quick body scan and where do you feel tension? And breathe into that part. And let the tension go on the exhale. And bringing the attention back to the breath, and it's okay if your thoughts have wandered. That happens, and that's okay. Notice that. Bring your attention back to the breath. That's your anchor. And then finishing off, feeling your body in space. How do the edges of your body feel as they're in the space around you? And then bringing your attention back to the present moment, wiggling your fingers, wiggling your toes, and recognize that that was a mindful activity. You did that on purpose, and that is paying attention on purpose. And we went through some of the sensations like somatic awareness, how our body feels, auditory, sound, our breath, which is a great anchor. We carry the breath with us in everything we do. And you can do an activity like this not needing to be guided by anyone. You can do it out walking, and somatic awareness, like how does the wind feel, the coolness feel, the weather feel on your face? What visual cues what are you hearing? How do your feet feel as they walk on the ground? So I really want you to think about how can you do mindfulness in a really agile way when you know your thoughts are getting the better of you. And then for me, sometimes it's hard for me to do that. Like it's hard for me just to say, okay, I've got to focus on the breathing. Kathy, your monkey mind is getting the you. So I turn to an app so that I can do mindfulness and do a guided meditation at certain times of the day, like when I'm out walking my border collie. So I like Insight Timer, which is an app I have on my phone. It's really easy to use. It doesn't take up a lot of meditations, hundreds of meditation teachers. So, and it's free. Most of the meditations are free. There's also Calm and Headspace that a lot of people like using. I'm going to, again, encourage you to go into the chat, type in any other ways that you like to do mindfulness. We heard about the VIN-CE, Veterinary Information Network. We heard about the shoppers. I'm seeing another one come through, that the VIN and then the staff side of VIN, which is the SPN, have one-on-one support. That's awesome. Yeah, Vets for Vets and Support for Support. And then the SPN is free for staff. I love the social learning because I didn't realize that the SPN is free for staff. Thank you so much. From the elusive reception. Thank you. Yeah, I'm seeing some links there. Thanks, Jessica, to silvercloudhealth.com. Awesome. And let's just keep that chat going. So if you have any other resources that you like to use to stay mindful. Oh, I see, Catherine. I looked at that as something to recommend to others, but it doesn't seem open to non-corporate clients. Do we know others? Are you referring back to the VIN-CE? Catherine, we just type in, oh, the mindfulness training. Oh, okay, that's too bad, yeah. Maybe if someone could just check out that Vets for Vets and see if they do offer that free of charge to staff, and then just come back in the chat and report back, that would be great. Oh, the Silver Cloud, okay, great. Doesn't seem open to non-corporate clients. So yeah, let's just continue the chat. Oh, Lumosity Mind, thank you. Okay, so to keep track of time, I'm going to move on because I did mention that evidence-based, that technique we just did is evidence-based, and holy mackerel, there's a lot of evidence to show how practicing mindfulness for medical students and physicians and nurses helps in so many physiological and cognitive ways, also reducing the risk of medical errors. The research on the mindfulness benefits for veterinary professionals, a little bit more truncated. It's been about an 8 to 10 year history, led by some real change agents at the Western College of Vet Medicine, Dr. Trish Dowling and Erin Wasson. Erin is a social worker at the veterinary school there. And Erin, as many others in the space of veterinary medical curriculum, believe that practicing mindfulness, paying attention on purpose, is a professional competence, just like learning and practicing surgical and technical skills and communications. So I'm often asked at this point, what are some tips to stay psychologically safe during COVID? And I'm likely going to be telling you things that you don't already know, but it's just really starting to pay attention to how can these things be integrated into your life. So certainly maintaining regular schedules, and we know life has been turned upside down in so many ways. So then just thinking about developing routines in order to create that sense of structure, to help have compartmentalization of when our thoughts get the better of us and then when we need to do things, and to create a sense of accomplishment. On one of the calls, someone talked about worry time, is that they enable themselves for half an hour every day to worry. It's usually in the evening, and that by the time they get to that worry time, the things that they were worried about during the day have now either been resolved or not so much of a worry. Looking after your basic needs, and these use the word will. I will try to get regular sleep. I will try to exercise every day to burn off some restless energy, and I will try to eat healthy foods, or I will try not to eat as much junk food. So those basics have those needs, those Maslow needs of hierarchy, very important to look after. And psychologists say that when we are in times of adversity and stress, like with COVID, extending gratitude, gratefulness to others, maybe it's words of acknowledgement, maybe it's some things that you do for others, it provides a psychological and mental health boost, both for the recipient as well as the giver. And that the giver also has elevated positive neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. And psychologists also talk about finding hopefulness. And here in Alberta, Alberta Health Services, and I bet more of your public health authorities have done this too, we can text to 393939. We enter COVID-10 HOPE, and we get daily tips. And the daily tip today was when we're trying to chunk down our goals and our tasks, keep them SMART, specific, measurable, action-oriented results, and then timely. And then somebody on the Wednesday call mentioned the inspiringhopefullaction.com website in order to recognize how we can have hopefulness in this space. How can we extend hopefulness to others? And there's an excellent April 2020 hopeful calendar that is to help us get through COVID for the next few weeks. And then recognizing getting mental health information from credible sources. The Canadian Mental Health Association is doing a fantastic job on their Twitter that every day they have links, again, to very credible sources. So you can follow them on Twitter. All of the resources I developed last year for the Time to Talk campaign are available on the Canadian Veterinary Medical Association website, and I'm really grateful that the Canadian Medical Association website has linked all of their wellness resources to their COVID landing page. Get COVID updates from credible websites, again, at specific times of the day so that you're compartmentalizing, receiving this information, and making sense of it. Our provincial veterinary association, their staff, their registrars are working around the clock to provide excellent information to us as members. As I mentioned, the CVMA has a really good landing page with links to things like Dr. Wies's Worms and Germs blog. He just updated it today with a video on physical distancing in vet clinics. He is contributing really helpful and relevant information for us in the veterinary professional world. And then, of course, your public health unit, your provincial or territory public health authority, the Government of Canada's COVID-19 webpage, and World Health Organization. So I'm going to stop there and ask, are there any specific questions when it comes to staying psychologically safe that you would like me to address? So again, I invite you to go to the chat, and then I'm just going to go and monitor the chat now. I see it's been really busy, which is fantastic. So I'm seeing that Yadwiga mentioned, oh, hi, Yadwiga. I know Yadwiga from previous jobs. 10%happier.com, excellent. Jessica, oh, thanks for reporting back. It's free, so this is the Shoppers Drug Mart. Silver Cloud, it's free to all Canadians until June 15th. Click through the links on the Shoppers page, and the link is there. Thank you. Yadwiga has updated the 10% Happier link. I see Brigitta Priz, P-R-I-Z-Z app for sleep, nap, and focus. Wonderful. Okay. So wonderful resources in there. Any specific questions on, the psychological safety? Again, I mentioned one of the questions we had on Wednesday was how to get help around the financial strain that we're all feeling, and some people being laid off as well. So again, go to 211 and then encourage people, if you know people in your life who are worried about the financial stressors right now, have them reach out to their providers, like the utility providers, any of their bill things that they have to pay. Talk to those providers and ask what they have in place for COVID, because most people do, even landlords do. And so coming up to 1 minute to go, I'm doing a lot of social connectivity with my dog and my horse right now, and our barn is fortunately still open. It's a private, very family-run barn, and you can tell that my good barn mate Alice is hundreds of meters away taking this photo. However, I do want to encourage you to find ways to still stay socially connected, even in the face of physical distancing. And also, it's okay to stop and give yourself some time, some kindness, some self-compassion, because you are deserving of it. And by filling up your battery of your own gratefulness and your own compassion and your own kindness to yourself, means that you have more to give to others. Maybe it's staff, maybe it's clients, it's your family members. And I want to extend my gratitude to you for joining the webinar. And I send you off with hopefulness to be safe, well, and relatively at ease as you navigate these unprecedented times. You can always reach out to me at Kathleen, K-A-T-H-L-E-E-N, Kyle, K-E-I-L, @merck.com. It's now at the half-hour mark, so again, I thank you for joining. I'll stay on for the next 5 minutes or so. If you have any questions, either put it into the chat message, and then I will also take people off of mute as well. So thanks for joining. If you have to go, have a great weekend. So right now I've just unmuted everybody. So if you have any questions and you want to talk live, please feel free.
Do you have any tips if one of your employees is having a nervous breakdown while they're at work on shift, how to help them and support them through that moment?
Yeah. Well, you're very aware to notice that, and yes, sorry that's happening to you and also your staff member. And I think what would be good is if you can call the employee assistance plan even now, just to find out and talk with like a psychologist and a trained person on what are the steps to help people feel physically and mentally more at ease during a nervous breakdown. But certainly breathing, sitting, getting head lower than the heart and breathing, and just focus on the breath. And you could even have them count the breath. So breathing in to a count of 4, and then breathing out to a count of 4, and you talking them through a breathing exercise will help them shift their mind away from that sympathetic overdrive. And then if you need someone like right away, certainly calling the employee assistance plan, because they can put a person who is trained in crisis intervention on the phone with you. And then also calling the crisis line, the 1833 number. So those would be more immediate tips. But I think given that it's happened, and I'm always a bit of a fact-forward person, if it's happened, it likely will happen again, not necessarily with that same person, but with another person. So I encourage you to reach out to your provincial employee assistance plan and ask for a counselor to talk you through what the steps would be. So that's where my mind goes. Is that at all helpful?
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's good to see people on video. Thanks for joining.
It's Kaylee here, calling in from Stratford. I guess my questions are more directed towards the client aspect of things, because I find managing our clients are a big part of what lowers our stress levels. I'm coming from a little bit of a different place probably than most people here because I'm in the dairy industry. But it also means I've got the opportunity to help people on a more personal level as I know them more personally.
Yeah.
You know, I think right now the feelings of isolation, they're everyone's feeling them, but the more rural you get, the harder it gets to connect. Do you know of any ways right now that we can facilitate community, anything like churches are doing Zoom meetings and that sort of things, but how we can facilitate those feelings of community and help for people who might be more isolated?
Right, and especially those producers. Yeah. So are you aware, Kaylee, of the Do More Ag Foundation? I'll put it in the chat.
They do a lot of good work. However, their resources are very much based on an emergency basis, which is fantastic, but I know how difficult it is to bring people together in these rural areas, but there's not a whole lot out there on how to facilitate it.
Okay. So what I've done is I've written for Ontario, I've written a mental health resource list for clients. I'm just going to go to it now. And in it, there are some links for or help for rural and producers. So the OMAFRA, I know they have a mental health program. So touching base with OMAFRA could help too. OMAFRA, 1 second here. I'm putting it in the chat. OMAFRA.gov.on.ca. And then another suggestion I have too is in Stratford, and you probably in Stratford, would be your local chapter, the Canadian Mental Health Association. And they do have a program providing mental health to rural areas. I think it's called the Canadian Mental Health Rural Program. So getting hold of your local chapter, call the Canadian Mental Health Association, ask them what they could do to help connect people in rural practices together, whether it's Zoom or WebEx or FaceTime, because likely they've thought about it or they might have something already initiated.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Kaylee. Yeah, you've got a lot of producers, a lot of dairy, a lot of pork producers in that area, so I wish you well. And you're doing the right thing by creating that social connectivity, because we do know social isolation, both in the farming world, but also our world as veterinary and veterinary practitioners and professionals, is creates a higher risk for things like depression, anxiety.
We're seeing quite a bit of it out there right now.
Yeah. Well. Oh, and the last person I thought of too is the Ontario Vet College, Dr. Andrea Jones-Bitton is doing a mental health first aid course specifically for farmers.
Okay.
Do you want to email me and then I can send you those links, Kelly?
Yeah, that would be awesome. I do know of Andrea Jones. I've heard her speak a couple of times, and I didn't realize that program was up and running. So I will email you now if you've got a link to that.
Yeah. So I just emailed you, emailed to everyone my email address. So it's Kathleen, Kathleen, Kyle, Keil, at Merck, MERCK.com.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Kelly. Any other questions? I see so many people I recognize on the participant list. That's wonderful. Thanks for joining and supporting me. Oh, 1 second. I'm also going to turn off. I'm going to stay on. I'm just turning off the recording. 1 second.